Over the past 2 months, Starfleet and the Klingon Empire have been in continuous retreat, but no longer. This month, the fight back begins. Greetings, loyal members, and welcome to the Dominion War. Last month, Starfleet retreated further and began mobilizing its reserves in the systems of Gaza Prime, Sol, and Benzar. Additionally, the Klingons were also mobilizing reserves at Nomad and Karag, and the combat fleets themselves performed a tactical withdrawal, breaking contact with a large portion of the Dominion fleet, but surrendering many Federation systems to the Dominion. And that brings us to this month. Starting from the top, up at the inner front, the Federation mounts its first major counterattack, known as Operation Macedon, in which the 7th Fleet would attack through Tyra to liberate the Maxia Actium Wall. Now, unfortunately, by the time this happens, much of the wall has fallen to Dominion siege fleets. However, Actium itself is actually still holding out and will continue to hold out. We've already covered the tragic Battle of Tyra and that disastrous effect, but not many mention the success that was the attack at Kytheria. The fleet based at Zychin moved down to Kytheria and actually creates something of a wedge in the Dominion front. Now, it will go on to take quite the beating there. It's largely isolated, but it prevents really the rest of the Dominion inner front from supporting the Dominion central front, which is now pushing towards Earth, effectively tying them both down and preventing one from moving too much without a salient forming. This can be seen down in Tantalus, where the Tantalus system is already being surrounded by 3 Federation fleets. Now, equally, the Dominion will advance on to Tesnia, and this will drive back the fleet holding the Oniaka system. Overall, they are still falling back, but they are falling back in a much more controlled and managed way. And they are ultimately long-term making it much more difficult for the Dominion to properly advance by creating these wedges in the front, these hard points, which the Dominion will have to go through if they want to take further objectives. And so they will retreat back to Gaza Prime and thus holding the upper front. Now, moving down to the centre. I mentioned previously that you have the Tantalus salient, and that pretty much immobilizes the central fleet. And the Federation fleet at this point actually has a lot better cohesion. However, the Dominion will still continue its advance. The central fleet will take Babel, and then the outer fleet will take Basari, and thus beginning the siege of Vulcan. Babel and Basari are 2 relatively major Vulcan colonies, and they really form a defensive ring around much of the Federation core world, so defending them is absolutely critical to Starfleet. Starfleet will also find itself having to protect Belarus Prime, and this will lead to the formation of the Belarus Pocket, with the Dominion fleets in and around Babel and Basari, and all around those, and connecting those 2 systems, are then surrounding the Belarus Pocket. So the Federation will have to fight a very tough defense in order to hold on when they are now surrounded by as many as 7 Dominion fleets. Now, it's not all peaches for the Dominion. They're not going to have an easy ride either. The Dominion fleet at Babel is surrounded by 2 fleets, the Klingon Expeditionary Force under Martok, and a Federation fleet at Nibia. Similarly, the fleet at Basari is now engaged by 3 Federation fleets at Regulus, Eridani, and Ikar. And that front is also under strain from the Klingons. The Klingon fleet, now joined by its reserves, is now holding a line from Oceanus to Janus, and this is really preventing further Dominion advances. It's also really strained their foothold in Basari, as I previously mentioned, since they are engaging Dominion fleets along Ardana, Tigaria, Herkos, and Makos, making it really quite difficult for the Dominion. It's really quite a tenuous foothold that they have, and the Klingons holding this line buy more time for the Federation reserve fleets that are mustered at Rigel and Kritassa Prime, and they then join the front holding at Tanuga and Zaranite. Now, I mentioned previously the fight back, and it's really overall a mixed outcome, and the Federation will take huge casualties defending their core systems. Not to mention their attempt at a counterattack in Operation Macedon had mixed results at best. They're really straining to hold back the Dominion. But that's not the only kind of fight back that's going on. Captain Sisko and other highly experienced Federation captains are being sent on raids behind Dominion lines, destroying Ketracel White's production facilities. Now this is still very important because of course the Dominions still have not opened the wormhole. These facilities are really the Dominion's lifeline right now, and by destroying them, it's a real punch to the Dominion forces. It's a palpable hit. Now, I previously mentioned last month that actually the Dominion forces were already somewhat strained and not occupying systems, particularly minor systems, but now even this month, when Beta Z falls behind Dominion lines, it will go unoccupied simply because they do not have the resources to do so. With the straining of the Ketracel White supply chain, there's not really enough Jem'Hadar to go occupying Federation, even major Federation planets, and so many planets will be spared their Dominion occupation, and in fact occupations will actually be ended on many other worlds as they are needed more, as more and more troops are needed at the front line, as now a real attritional battle is beginning to take shape along the Belarus pocket and the siege of Vulcan. So that really brings us to the end of the month, with the Dominion successfully defeating a Federation counterattack on the Gazar front, but the Federation still managing to frustrate attempts to advance at Kephiria, and really preventing the further advance of the Dominion central front, while in the outer front, the Dominion begins to maneuver into a position to threaten Vulcan, a Federation founding world. It is not the unstoppable advance that we saw in previous months. This is a strained advance, and the Dominion are beginning to suffer the effects of attrition, and will continue to do so. And this is causing a strain in the supply lines. The Dominion can't really afford to fight the war like this for much longer. They will need to get that wormhole open. Now, if the wormhole is reopened, the Dominion are in a prime position to win this war in a matter of months. But for the time being, the Dominion is desperate to keep the Federation off balance and hold it together until they can reopen that wormhole. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next time.